Welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine.com TV podcast. And we got some special guests today. Well, one special guest and Doug Skene. We've got Angelique Chengelis. You know we love you, Skene, so as Bill Simonson would say. But Angelique from the Detroit News, and you know what I call her, the silent assassin on the beat. It's funny because she's not the one that's tweeting every little thing that she hears. There's nobody in the business, and Angelique, I've said this on our message boards, that is more plugged in and is better on the beat than Angelique. She's been doing it for a while. You don't look like you've been doing it for a while, just to be clear. So, but thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's been quite the saga, huh?
Yeah, I mean, well, just going to how long I've been doing it. Doug was a senior the first year I started covering the team.
I wasn't
So,
going to say it. I didn't mean for you to give it away. So,
but
yeah.
yes, in all the years, so that was my 30th season of covering Michigan football, and it was I was trying to measure. I can think of games, ends of games that are like blow your mind, and you got to change the way you're writing a story. And frankly, I had to change the way I was writing this story. I was finishing up a list of candidates for the next head coaching position. Wednesday morning, I woke up thinking Jim Harbaugh was going to be the Minnesota Vikings coach. I was literally trying to make dinner Wednesday night, open the oven to put the meal in to cook. I got a text and I'm like, I gotta go. Oven's open. I ran upstairs and everything changed. And it was wild, as you know, as Doug knows. It was wild to watch.
It was tough to watch, to be honest with you, because and let me explain something here, okay? We put out an article, I think it was Tuesday, that we talked to three people with direct knowledge of the situation on Jim Harbaugh's side, and they said he's going up there to sign a contract. He's not coming back. We're talking about people that he spoke with that day, including somebody on his staff who was concerned, saying, okay, what's my next step? Are we going to be interim coaches? And we'll get to that in a minute, but they really wanted their shot to show that, hey, we can do this. But he went up there not planning on coming back. And at that point, Angelique, it would have been any NFL job. It could have been the Detroit Lions, in my opinion, or somebody. He had that itch, and he admitted that today. And Angelique traded texts with him. And but you've been saying this, Angelique, for 7 years, that Jim Harbaugh is not the lifer at Michigan that everybody wants to think he is. That he's still got that Super Bowl itch, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to be honest with you.
I've never thought anything wrong with that. I mean, the guy has ambitions. His brother's in the NFL. He lost the Super Bowl to his brother. He's a competitive guy. Look at all these stories he's told about wrestling with John and pushing him underwater. He wanted to push him underwater one more time and win a Super Bowl or 2 Super Bowls, whatever. And there is nothing wrong. He loves Michigan. There is no doubt that he loves Michigan. I mean, that's never been in question. But since the day he took the job, I always believed he wanted to go back. My feeling is he wanted to get Michigan. He found Michigan in disarray. I think that's fair. I mean, and he wanted to get it back. And this was the year he finally got it to that level that people had hoped he would do in year 2, maybe 3. And so why not let him go test the waters? Why not let him go take that next step in his career or return? So no, I wasn't shocked that he has interest, and I can't imagine that this ended his interest in it, but we'll see where it goes.
And we'll see how much interest he has going forward, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. But Skene, there were reports that there were guys that were helping him prepare, guys that he was going to take with him, for a long time, and say, this is what you need to do in the interview, and so on and so forth. Excited about moving to Minnesota, and I love Minneapolis. I don't like -30, but I love the city, So now I think the point is you've got half the guys that don't seem like they want to be there. And the chemistry that you had last year was one of the big things that helped change the culture of that program and get it back to where it needed to be. And those guys were so tight. Now, in speaking to some of them directly, and they're like wondering, what's going to happen here this year, and how do you mend those fences, Skene?
Well, Balas, as you and I have talked about for years now, every team and every season is different. Now it's just really, really, really more different for this coming fall, right, with this season. So the momentum, the good feeling, the accomplishment, that feels like it might as well have been 2 or 3 years ago now with what's transpired in the last few days. So Jim Harbaugh and his coaching staff have to, first of all, gather themselves to clear the air, to understand, who really wants to be here and what the feeling is coming from the top down. And then they're going to have to address that team and the leaders that were expected to lead this team and the up and coming leaders that we don't even know yet. That roster and that locker room now has to be regained and reset going into spring football to let everybody understand that we are here for one mission, because your head coach clearly was ready to go to the NFL. And now to turn around and say, I love Michigan, I want to be here. Well, there may be a lot of truth to that. And I do agree with you guys. And Jim loves Michigan, but if I could go back to being a 21-year-old guy on that football team, I would have a hard time just swallowing that Kool-Aid without questioning, how bad do you really want to be here, coach? And what will happen next year if we have another good season like we just did? Well, the next NFL team calls. So I think this is going to be around for a while every time Michigan has a good year like we did last year. But it feels like last year is really, really in the rearview mirror now, when things are really starting over.
Yeah, it does, and that's fair to say. So, Angelique, going forward here, well, first of all, let's take a step back here. And is it your understanding that the Vikings had Jim Harbaugh #1 on their list as well going into the interview? Because I don't think he gets on that plane unless he has that assurance.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely everything I'd heard. I was in communication with one of the beat writers up there. That's what he was hearing. I mean, it was definitely Jim Harbaugh's job. And I think he's saying it in comments he made to Mitch Albom that, he wanted that job. He wanted to get, start working for the Minnesota Vikings. And maybe he didn't say that in so many words, but it was clear that he was going there feeling very confident that he was going to leave Michigan and become the Vikings coach. And I agree with Doug. I mean, he's got a lot of relationships to repair. The guy had generated so much goodwill last season. I mean, the winning, obviously, beating Ohio State, donating his incentive money back to the department. I mean, saying all the things, the things that everybody wants to hang on. Oh, he said he'd do it for nothing. You don't have to pay him. He loves Michigan. Now, I mean, that seems like that was eons ago. But to me, the first thing he has to do is meet with that team. And it's not a couple phone calls he's made to some of the upperclassmen. He's got to repair relationships, even with these freshmen who are coming in who are they were like, wait, what do you do? I mean, how do I look into getting out of my my commitment to Michigan? I signed this letter of intent, but he's not intending to stay. What do I do? So he has to repair those relationships first, then work on his coaching staff. But to me, the players are number one here.
Yeah, and there were some. Go ahead, Skene.
I was going to say, I had a thought, thinking this through, you guys, and I've been thinking about this in this era of one transfer, no questions asked, and the money that's now involved. Is it going to be as crazy as we think it might be for him to get that room back? Because there's a lot of players in America right now looking at their college football careers 1 year at a time. Yeah. And transfer is just one thought away. And maybe, just maybe, we're overthinking this a little bit. I think there's definitely some legitimacy to the staff. Now, that's different, right? But so many college football players now in this era of transfer and NIL, they may not even be here next year. So maybe they won't look at their coach as negatively as we think they will. Just a thought that I had.
Well, that's true, Doug, but there aren't that many landing spots. You can, are they going to all, head into the portal? Where are they going to go? A lot of these guys are just sitting in the portal waiting.
They're all going to Michigan. They're all going to Michigan State, Angelique.
No, they're going to Ole Miss, because Lane Kiffin said he's basically just recruiting college football players now instead of high school kids. So they're all going to go to Ole Miss.
Continue. I'm sorry, Angelique.
No, that was it. That was just my point. I mean, there aren't all these landing spots, but sure, I do think that the way I think that is the automatic. Well, I can get out of this. I can leave. I've got the 1 year bonus here to transfer. So, but yeah, I mean, I do think, I talked to one of the commitments to this 2022 class, and he was like, they did tell me during the recruiting process, don't hang it all on who's the head coach. You want to go to Michigan. You want to get this degree. And I know that's something we've heard for 30 years, at least that I've been covering the team, and that is important. And it's not something that every player embraces, but I do think that they're all going to look at this and say, well, why would I give this up too? Just because because this coach left. My position coach is still there for now. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to repair here, I think. I don't think it's something to just brush it under the
yeah, no, I think this is going to take all of spring and into the fall, and really I think for some of these players in the staff, it's going to have to be a whole off season of nothing about Jim leaving for the NFL. You know, a year from now, this needs to be about just Jim recruiting and following through what he says he's now, you know, feeling, and just being all in for Michigan and the enthusiasm and all that stuff he likes to talk about. You know, he apparently and allegedly, from what I read, he's told Ward that he's done flirting with the NFL. Okay, well, the only problem that Coach Harbaugh has now is that we're going to have to wait a year to start to believe that.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But you know, you also have to wonder: have his prospects in the NFL dried up? I mean,
yes.
Are there going to be NFL teams interested in him going forward? I mean, that we don't know. He may have an interest, but they may not have an interest in him, and that may just squash all of this.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. It was, you know what, it was going to be the Raiders, and then it was nobody else for a long time until they hired the GM at Minnesota, who he knew at San Francisco, saying, okay, the Jim Harbaugh I remember is a guy worth pursuing heavily. Right now, that Jim Harbaugh, number one, had some issues with the front office, but number two, isn't the same guy he was 10 years ago, in my opinion. You know, so I'm not saying that he's a bad coach or anything, but you're not getting, you know, the fired up, the jackhammer that you had back then either. So going forward, you know, this is a young coaches league, Skene.
Mm-hmm. Hey, well, I think it absolutely is that, Balas. But 10 years in the NFL, the game in the NFL has changed. It's not what it was. So Jim Harbaugh, if the feeling is that he's going to go to the NFL and run 46, 47G and play action off of that to go to a Super Bowl, that ain't happening, man. It is a 7-on-7 pass, offensively dynamic league, and obviously quarterback driven. And I'm not suggesting that Jim would not, you know, and his staff, if he were the Vikings coach, couldn't adjust to that and become that kind of coach. But so much has changed in the way the game is performed in 10 years that the old Jim Harbaugh clearly was probably not going to have success in the NFL without him making some significant changes. And maybe the Vikings said, hey, you know what? This guy that's with the Rams and got this offense going, picked up a talented quarterback to make it happen. I know that makes you happy there, Balas. And so, you know, maybe there's a football factor, a true on the field football factor to why one of the reasons the Vikings did a reverse course and hired the guy from the Rams.
I think he interviewed well.
Matt Weiss here either, what his role in all of this was. Michigan's quarterback coach. I mean, he had a connection with the GM at the Vikings too. You know, he had a vested interest in making this work, because I think he's a guy who wants to get back to the NFL as well. So maybe going forward, because you know he'll be on staff with Jim Harbaugh, maybe he does, you know, continue to make connections and convince people that Jim Harbaugh still has it in him. So that's why I don't think it's done. I mean, I think what Jim's saying right now is he's not going to flirt with it. Okay, fine. But I agree with Doug. In 1 year, you know, Chris, we're going to be making all the same phone calls we were making the last couple of weeks. And
yes.
we will, Angelique, you guys will be making those same phone calls if Michigan has another really good year.
Right.
And that's fair. Yep. And you're going to have to wonder, you know, one of the things, and I've said this, was the chemistry, and everything came together this year. You know, it's like, what was that? There was a movie where they said a good song is like a fine stew and everything has to come together, right? Like a hit song. Well, it's the same thing with a great football season, in my opinion, where especially in this day and age when the culture has been up and down, and we know for a fact that the culture was crap in 2020, and they've talked about it. Ronnie Bell has talked about it. So everything came together. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to duplicate that, especially now. And to me, that is the biggest concern, because I know in talking to people on that staff that there are hurt feelings too, and that there were guys looking at, even if Jim comes back, what am I going to do next? And that's a fact. So to me, that's high up on the list too, Angelique. And what's your sense of the staff? And I know that you've got great connections. What's your your sense on what they're feeling right now?
No, I think what you just described is completely accurate, Chris. I mean, there are hurt feelings. There are people who felt like they were going to be left behind too. Like, oh, why am I not going to go to the Vikings with Jim Harbaugh? And I think that a couple of the guys who were probably candidates are, for if it was an internal hire, are wondering, well, okay, now what?
Right.
I thought this was going to happen, and now it's like everybody was taken to this level of anticipation, and then it came crashing down. So you're right, and I really did. My first thought was that Jim was going to come back from Minnesota and walk in like, what? Nothing happened. I mean, kind of head in the sand, and he can't, because you're right. I'm focused. I was definitely focused priority on players, but the coaching staff, can he keep it intact? That's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because I do think that there are people waffling now on what they should do, and is this worth the headache that sometimes it is working on this staff?
How about the brand new coach from Notre Dame, defensive line coach?
Yeah,
just
right.
got and is wondering, he was one decision away from maybe being right back out of here.
Right.
You're right.
That's tough. These guys are moving families. Their families are here, and the coaching profession is tough enough as it is for these guys and their wives and their children. And so to have this uncertainty only makes it more stressful.
Here's the interesting thing, and how much they thought this was a done deal, is that one of them had a relative that was going to go to Michigan and had to reverse course and apply other places because he wasn't going to be going to Michigan anymore, and because there was too much uncertainty. So I want to get back for a second, Angelique, to everything that the Minnesota media wrote about this, and it kind of backed up what we said, that okay, here's the thing that I didn't put in the article when I said, okay, Jim Harbaugh is planning on signing with Minnesota, and which was 100% true, that he viewed it as a formality of sorts. I believe that's true. I think he went in there, and they all have egos, but Jim Harbaugh's thinking, I'm Jim Harbaugh. They want me. I'm going to take it, and so on and so forth. But they were preparing too up there, like he was going to be their head coach. There's no question about it. People can say whatever they want to. What about this Jim Stapleton thing, Angelique? About they've got a minority owner here who doesn't like Jim Harbaugh, so he's the one that sabotaged this whole thing.
I don't know if he had that much pull or input here. I think, that was a consideration. I think one thing I'd heard is that the 49ers input, people, they talked to more people with the 49ers organization about the relationships with Jim. And I have a feeling that played a little bit more of a role. And when they asked him about it, I can only imagine, we know when we ask Jim anything that he takes a little personally, he gets a little, I think he gets, a little tight then that's when he stares at you. That's when he says, I'm not peeling back the onion. And if he said something like that to the Vikings, well, they expect answers. This is a 9-hour interview. They are looking to find out what it is what happened with the 49ers. Is this going to happen again? So the Stapleton reporting, that's accurate, but I don't know how much that played a role in it. I think more of the management issues from his 49ers tenure was probably more of an issue in the conversations with him.
And we'd heard that about the Raiders too, that because he's got a great relationship with Mark Davis here. And I don't want to say that the Rams, or I'm sorry, the 49ers are blackballing him for the rest of the NFL. I think they're just being honest as they see it, And when your coach goes into a room to the owner and he says, this meeting's for men only, and I'm the owner of another team, and I'm thinking, okay, let's make sure that we're not going to have these issues again. And I don't think that's unfair.
No, I agree. And look, I think a lot of the things that I heard that Jim may have said during these interviews, a lot of these with the Vikings, a lot of these things play well in a college locker room setting or college environment with 18 to 21-year-olds. And, they were looking to change a culture at the Vikings. They cleaned house with their GM and their coach. And I'm not trying to put Jim Harbaugh in that category with Zimmer. I don't think he's that kind of guy. And but I don't think they saw enough in this interview to feel like he could be the guy to fix things there and to change the culture. Because I think some of the stuff that plays well for him here at Michigan, that Michigan fans would eat up, it's just not what the Vikings were looking for. I mean, that's just you can't pull some of those things from here and take there. That's just my vague opinion here.
And if you
Or
believe the
vague.
Minnesota writers, right? I know what
Yeah.
you're saying. And if you believe the Minnesota writers, it got to that point where at 3 o'clock, they're hiring him, and they're like, wow, this is really going to happen. He came in here and he aced the interview. And then you start asking those hard questions, Skene. And it's like, okay, now when we interview Jim Harbaugh, it's after about, 10 minutes that the answers start getting to be about 5 words. And that's nothing, it's just like he seems to lose interest. And that's not disparaging him. That's just the way he is. Right. So I can only imagine at 5 hours or 4.5 hours with Jim Harbaugh, what he's thinking and how that thing is going to be a fly on that wall. And Angelique, I know that you know people that were privy to some of what went on, and we wouldn't ask you obviously for those details on the record. We're going to have drinks later, and you can tell me everything. But Skene, it doesn't, in that sense, shouldn't surprise anybody, I guess, that after 4.5 hours here. 9-hour interviews are a long interview. Have you ever had a 9-hour interview?
Collectively, no. I was going to say
Yeah.
for jobs that I've had, you can have multiple interviews for sure. That's kind of standard issue now in the corporate world, 2, 3, 4. Then you have a panel interview with maybe HR, a hiring manager, a couple other managers, but nothing that would even equal 9 hours. Certainly nothing that I've experienced. Based on what I see, right? So I'm not, I don't have access to the head coach like you guys do, but just from the outside looking in on television, you could tell his patience for the question lines is pretty thin. And not granted, game days, et cetera, are emotional, and he's probably got more important things he'd rather do, like get to his team and his coaches and his family after a game than answer questions from you guys. That's no disrespect for you guys, but it just seems like that's the way it looks. And so, it sounds like Minnesota did exactly what they should have done, which is put this guy in an uncomfortable situation. Let's keep him here for hours and see how this goes. What kind of patience level does he demonstrate? And what happens when we put him in these kind of moments and ask him questions to describe some things in length and go into some detail and have a long-term conversation here? And maybe it didn't go so well. And then the other thing, you guys, maybe this coach from the Los Angeles Rams is really, really, really good. And they just decide, you know what, this is the guy that's going to get us to the Super Bowl where we want to go. And Coach Harbaugh is good, but not as good as this other guy. And after 9 hours, we now know this. And so we're going with the Rams guy, which is obviously what they did. And so that's, again, if you're an NFL owner, this is not about feeling good and being happy, unless maybe, some Detroit Lions fans might argue with me there. But every NFL team I've ever known about or had, teammates that played for or know about, there is one freaking goal, and that is to get to the Super Bowl and win it. And whoever can get us there is going to be the one we pick. And Jim Harbaugh came in second.
Or third.
Or third.
Angelique, is Jim Harbaugh the best short-term solution for this program going forward? Because I know there were a lot of people a lot of fans with a lot of angst saying, okay, where do we go next? And I do know from people who were on the committee that they were going to call Luke Fickell. I knew that, and that's a pipe dream. And I want to ask you about that in a second with your Ohio roots, unfortunately. But and Houday, and God bless you for that, because I've been living vicariously through Angelique watching the Cincinnati Bengals play. Okay, and that's my team now. So, but anyway, and I know that Matt Rule was on the list, and I think that Angelique knows that too. But I think Rule might have been a possibility depending on the contract. I don't think Fickell, there's any way in hell he's coming to Michigan. But in the short term, in that respect, Angelique, for the program stability, is Jim Harbaugh the best option?
I think so. I mean, he's got a proven track record here. You would think it's going to encourage the continuity, but again, I mean, as we talked about, it's been disrupted. There's a break in that line right now. But yes, I mean, he's a very good coach. He's all those things that we've talked about. He's quirky. He's this, that, but he's a known commodity here. I thought I was anticipating the next step. I mean, I was waiting to see who the next coach would be and how that would go. I mean, handing off a nice program to the next coach. I'm not saying that the next one couldn't have done a very good job this upcoming season. But yeah, I mean, for now, and it just, Do you look at Jim? Is this a fallback for Jim? I mean, if you're saying that he wanted this Vikings job, do Michigan fans feel a little bit like a fallback for Jim Harbaugh? So, those are things I think that people have to work through. And in this day and age, people forget things that happened yesterday. So I think that there will be peace soon in the fan base with the players and everything. It'll just take time, but. I was looking forward to seeing what the next step would be. I wanted to see where Ward Manuel would go. I mean, this is a big test for him to see his chops in terms of the hiring process. And it's not because I wanted Luke Fickell here, Chris. Don't smile.
I was going to say, you knew where I was going. You read my mind. He's dreamy.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. You got Federer back there who's going to get a little jealous, Angelique. So,
yeah, right.
I can't see him right now. You got him blocked out. So
I think Luke Fickell is a great coach. I mean, and he is at my alma mater at Cincinnati. And you look at how he's recruited Ohio hard and in the shadows of Ohio State. I mean, 100 miles away. He's done a really amazing job. He is a guy who he wants to be someplace for a while. He wants stability. Look how long he's been at UC now, and he's had opportunities. So, yeah, I was kind of curious to see how that. I really wanted to see how those conversations would go. Would a diehard true, I want to say true blue Buckeye, but you can't say that. Would somebody like him consider this? I think he would have considered it. And I've talked to people who know Luke and said, yeah, he'd do it, but those ties to Ohio State are so strong.
Wait a minute. He'd do it. He'd take the job, or he'd interview for it.
Yeah, no. I heard people saying that he would take this job, but all the scarlet and gray matter. The DNA, playing there, coaching there forever. I mean, you look at Luke. Everyone can say he's like the coach in waiting at Ohio State, but he did have a year there. It didn't go well as the interim. And, I'm just not so sure he is the guy they slide in if Ryan Day leaves. But, I mean, that we'll see that because that will happen at some point. Ryan Day will move on, I think. So I think
Wait a minute. That seems to be a no-brainer, though, Angelique, right? Fickell waiting for Ryan Day to move on and taking that job. Are they not as interested in him as he'd be?
I mean, maybe Marcus Freeman will be ready by that point. He's at Notre Dame. He's a defensive coordinator. Maybe he's somebody that Gene Smith wants to hire at Ohio State. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know, but I think that's somebody who's getting ready to. I mean, he was a defensive coordinator and then elevated to head coach at Notre Dame. So, you're gonna let's see where Marcus Freeman goes in the next couple of years with that, and then I think you weigh because I don't think Ryan Day's leaving anytime soon. But
right.
I mean, he's had issues there too. He wanted a bigger payday too. He wanted that contract, which they will release soon. Ryan Day is going to get a bump in his salary too. But look, I think people are going to start wondering if this is the lifestyle to keep too, this college football life. And if there's an NFL opportunity, I think someone like Ryan Day looks.
Okay, Doug Skene.
I was going to say, that's
where it's going.
You just hit that nail. Friends in the profession. Yeah, all right. Tell me. Nail on the head, Angelique. Yeah. I think in this current era, I don't care if your name is Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, Lincoln Riley, because these coaches have no control over their rosters right now. There are no rules. There is no equal salary cap. It is whoever's got the money and whoever's willing to go recruit other players in the era of NIL and transfer. If I'm Ryan Day or another talented coach and I got a chance to go to the NFL and see what I can do, I'm giving it a hard look. And I think Ryan Day will be in the NFL inside of 3 years. And then the next guy at Ohio State will step up. It could very well be Coach Fickell, and then that'd be a great choice for them because he's obviously a very good coach. But I think that we're seeing a transformation in college football, including coaches, that obviously we've never seen in our lifetimes, and it's changing so quickly. I think you're going to see a lot of coaching movement if given the opportunity to the NFL.
The interesting part of a Fickell thing, Angelique, is if you hire him and then what happens if Ohio State opens up in 2 years, that's a risk. If you're Ward Manuel, and how about the optics of that? Would that be unbelievable? But two things that I want to say. 1969 is a long time ago, right? You didn't have social media. You didn't have the Ohio State fan base was not quite as crazy back then, right? So Bo Schembechler wasn't going to get death threats or wasn't going to, have dog crap.
Oh, come on, Balas. They were that crazy back then. They just didn't have an iPhone to prove it.
or Twitter or a Twitter account, right? So okay, that's fair. At the same time, my God, Angelique, we've seen that fan base, and I'm not disparaging them all, just 90% of them. They're nuts. And I mean,
They
that could
are.
have made his life miserable. And so but you think that even with his family and everything else, because we've heard that, boy, that would be a huge consideration for him. That, I mean, he might say, okay, I will take this job, but maybe he goes and interviews and then gets cold feet at the last second and says, what am I doing? And then Michigan's left with egg on its face. But you really think that he would take this job?
I think it's a calculated risk to think that he is a shoo-in at Ohio State, and I'm not making a
Okay.
shoe reference. I just
Right.
think unless he's got a guarantee from Gene Smith saying, yes, you're going to be the next coach, why would you turn down a Michigan? I mean, really, I mean, there are the blue blood programs out there, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe Michigan hasn't been in the upper echelon year after year now, the last 10 years, getting to the playoff and being in the national championship contention, but it is still Michigan. And Gary Moeller was a captain of the Ohio State team, and I know it was back in the day, but he came to Michigan too. So look, the guy is, I mean, he grew up right there. I mean, he is as Ohio State as it comes. But I just don't think you just dismiss Luke Fickell and like, oh, he would never come here. I think
Right.
that a reasonable head coach who wants to take that next step, not disparaging Cincinnati, because he did, but do you want to be in the Big 12? You want to be in the Big 10, which you know better, and do you want to recruit an area well? This tri-state area, he knows that well. I just think that he'd be foolish not to take a hard look at Michigan.
Yeah, it's interesting. True story. You went to school with Urban Meyer at UC, is that correct?
I mean, we were in the same class. I didn't know him, but yeah, we graduated in the same class.
Okay. You were
Yeah.
okay. Oh, I thought you meant so did you have any classes together? There was no canoodling on the diag or anything? No. Okay.
I don't remember him. I mean, I was working at the school
Okay.
paper then. I don't remember him at all. And I remember the one time that the Citrus Bowl game, Lloyd's last game, and there was like a line of the Florida, and Urban was there and Tim Tebow, and I just asked him something, and I said, oh, as a quick aside, we were classmates. Absolutely stone face. Most people would say, oh, that's interesting. Nothing. And I'm like, whatever.
Okay.
So
not like the
Urban Meyer did
relationship.
not know me at UC. Okay, I was the one to know there. Not him.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows you now. And
Yeah, right.
done,
Oh, sure.
well, they do, and you've done great work. You are by
Okay.
far the best
Okay,
on the
Chris.
beat. And I appreciate it. I really appreciate you being here with us to kind of clear the air here about exactly what went on. So, Skene, your last thoughts here on where Michigan goes. Can this be the distraction that derails a 2022 season?
If the players allow it, Balas, it's always about the players, and the players always know who the players are. So whoever was going to emerge as the leaders on this team are still going to be the same guys. There'll be a few unknowns come fall. But the leadership on this team was already beginning to take place. These guys are having conversations in their apartments, on their couches, and hanging around, just spending time with one another. And somebody's going to have to take control of this team. And the leaders on that roster will decide in a large part how this goes. That's obviously, there's a short list of names we can all rattle off, starting with the quarterbacks. We've got 2 upperclassmen tight ends. You've got a couple offensive linemen. There's players there, and that will be the deciding factor with how this season goes. And there'll be a connection, obviously, with the coaching staff, but there'll be a reset. There's going to have to be some conversations, some clearing of the air conversations here this winter before they get into spring football. Let's remember, you guys, we don't even have a defensive coordinator yet. Did I miss something? Was there an announcement yet? There's a new DC in town, because I missed that if it was announced. So there's still a lot of questions in the air. The big fat reset button must be hit, and whoever's going to lead this team's got to step up and do so. Angelique, you were talking about earlier. You were talking about Jim's track record, a proven track record, and I agree. There's a proven track record, and he can be a really good coach. He can also be really average. And we've seen that in his time here in Michigan. So we'll see, because every season is of its own self, and 2022 will be no different.
Yeah, I put it as
let's not underestimate how much. Yeah, you're right. Jim can be average. He made himself better with this coaching staff he brought in.
Yes.
Mike McDonald helped make Jim Harbaugh
Oh,
better
yeah.
this year. Josh Gaddis got better last year. Mike Hart added a lot to this team. Ron Bellamy added a lot. So there were a lot of
Yep.
really good hires. I'm forgetting Steve Klingscale and George Hilo. So you are as good as your assistant coaching staff too. So
Yep.
he's got to keep those guys in place. And you're right, Doug. I mean, he's got to. The players have to. It has to come from within them. But do they have an Aiden Hutchinson who's going to be really that fiery guy who's going to keep? Ronnie Bell could be that guy. We shall see, but it's going to be. I don't think this is a quick, snap your fingers, it's going to be done. I think this is going to take.
It's a process.
Quarterback competition. Who knows what kind of hurt feelings are going to be there coming out of spring ball, heading into camp. So there's a lot. There is a lot. It is like a drama here, a soap opera.
It is, yeah, as Ann Arbor turns or whatever. But it is fascinating because, too, when you get these players like, okay, if they, for example, say that J.J. McCarthy beats out Cade McNamara and Cade wanted to leave, and I don't know if that'd be the case. I'm just spitballing here, but if you're Jim Harbaugh, you say, well, where's the loyalty, to a kid like that after what you've just gone through? Then it's like, sure, coach, okay, sign this, please, type of thing. So last thing I want to leave you with, Angelique, is something that Rich Eisen said yesterday on his show at 3:00. He said maybe at 3:00, which is when, supposedly that everything turned, maybe Jim Harbaugh was like, okay, I'm done interviewing. Do you want me or not? And he said, I'm the only coach that's ever been to a Super Bowl and been in the college football playoff. I could see something like that happening with look, we've been here for a long time. I was under the impression that you wanted to hire me. Do you want to hire me or not? Do you think that's out of the realm of possibility, Angelique?
Well, I don't think he's in any position or anybody interviewing for a head coaching job to issue ultimatums, and I know, but Jim Harbaugh does think highly of Jim Harbaugh. I mean, and that's not a criticism. He's got a lot of confidence in himself, and maybe he did do something like that. Then why would the interview have continued on for 5 more hours or whatever? I don't know when the interview ended, when it started, and would that have been 3 Central or 4 Eastern? I don't know, but I just think. That would have been, I guess I could see Jim issuing an ultimatum like that, but and losing patience and if he did, then that's a deal breaker. What management group would want to hire someone like that who's saying, okay, I'm the guy, we know that, hire me. You don't do that. And but I don't think it was like this epiphany, like, oh, I'm going to mess this up now. I really want to go back to Michigan. I don't think it was anything like that. I think he was all in for this. He prepared for many hours on Monday and Tuesday in his office. Matt Weiss was a big part of this, getting him ready for the analytics conversations that were going to happen. Because as Doug pointed out earlier, the game has changed significantly. The NFL game, college football has changed too, obviously in the last 7-8 years. But if he did that's just, I can't imagine he did, but. Yeah. I can't imagine that he's, not the Vikings coach right now. So
I can't either. Yeah, but it's fascinating, guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time, Angelique. The best in the business. Doug Skene, the best in the business. Skene, you could be an analyst for a living. Maybe get your play-by-play skills going too. I don't know if you've ever done that, but there's an opening.
Well, when I watch the PGA and the LPGA Balas, I do my best Jim Nantz to lower my voice and calm the senses and talk about the putting and the in and out clubhead path and a tradition of the other.
Is that how you read the Manscaped ad? Is that the voice he uses for the Manscaped ads?
Oh, Angelique, you don't want to hear these reads that Balas does. You do not want to hear these.
She's heard them.
I've heard them. I've heard them. I think Clayton may be the most, face completely straight face when he does those. And I'm like, I couldn't get through that.
Obviously, they're a great sponsor. They're a great sponsor, and I'm convinced that these guys that write these things are screwing with Balas to make him read these things.
Oh, for sure. Well, there's no doubt about that. The real coup. The real coup is having Jim hand it to Jim Harbaugh and have him read it. That would be really funny. That would be really. That'd be like Saturday Night Live having a Peyton Manning moment with.
All right, with 20 Go Blue, guy. By the way, 20 Go Blue at manscaped.com, I believe it is. So it's just fantastic. So I'm gonna make you read the next one, Skene, just for the hell of it. So
I don't think I can get through it.
Well, remember the one we did with 6 takes, and
Yes.
and I got to tell you, by the way, that's a great product, and I'm not disparaging. I mean, I love it. I use it every day. Used it this morning on my hair. They've got shampoo, regular shampoo. So anyway, we're done with this. All right, Angelique, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So thanks for being here, and Skene, yeah, you as well. So we'll do it again next week, Doug and Angelique. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure. It's always fun seeing Doug, at least.
Yeah, thanks. I knew you were going to say something.
Thanks, Angelique.
Hey, wait. Remember, Who Day. Who Day.
Who Day, baby.
That's right.
Yep,
Go
I'm living
Bengals.
vicariously through you. Now I hope they
Thank
lose. Now I hope they lose. Not just kidding. Not true at all. So you're set for a lot of years with that young quarterback. By the way,
I know. Joe Burrow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, we're done. Yeah, but thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Go Blue.